Alright. Let's go ahead and start streaming. And we're about to begin. Yes. Whoa. Okay. Looks like we are live.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Alright, excellent. We're live, we're good to go. We'll just have to wait for Loud Warrior. He decided to take a nap. Hopefully he'll be up in time. And we'll begin. And I'll probably be back in a bit. I gotta feed my kid and put him to bed here. So.
Alrighty.
So I believe we left off on Job 38.
Yep, when God makes his...
Should I start by reading it?
So just actually first we can start with, call it, just a summary. Since it's been, what, a month or so since our last get-together for this?
Yeah, true. So, well, basically, thus far, Job... Well, basically Job was a very well-off man who was seen righteous in the eyes of God. Satan decides that to basically test Job, and God allows it. He essentially has everything taken away from him, everything from his children to his wealth to his health. And his three friends afterwards show up and essentially try to convince him that he must have sinned somehow. And Job responds, please show me, basically each and every time, please show me how I've actually sinned. And they basically just reply, you must have sinned somehow. And finally, a fourth person who's involved kind of blasts Job. And basically that's where we are now.
Alright, the one small, I don't know if it's a small, but well, the side point I'd like to make is that Job also constantly presumes and assumes that God, capable and willing, give an answer. Simply, he thinks that it is his right to have an audience in God.
Yeah, true.
Not to plead his case. What he wants is an answer.
He really wants to know what the charges are. To use legal terminology.
Mm-hmm.
He basically wants to know what he did wrong. And in specifics, not in general platitudes that his friends keep giving him.
Alright. Okay, I actually have a bunch of notes for this. Oh, anyway. You want to start?
So how are we going to do these next? Are we going to just read them all through at once, or are we going to take them chapter by chapter?
Let's just go from here to the end, so we get a sense of the shape come. Then we come back to 38 and discussing.
All right then. I'll start it. Job 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind, and said, who is this that darkeneth the counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth. Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measure thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy, or who shut up the sea with doors, when it brake forth, as if it had issued out of the womb? When I made the clouds, the garments thereof, the thick darkness of swaddling band for it, and break up the decreed place, and set bars and doors, and said, Hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud ways be stayed. Hast thou commanded the morning since thy days, and caused the day spring to know his place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out of it? It is turned as clay to the sill, and thy stand as a garment. And from the wicked their light is withholden, and high arm shall be broken. Hast thou entered into the springs of the sea, or hast thou walked in search of the deep? Have the gates of death been opened unto thee, or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Hast thou perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare if thou knowest it all. Where is the way where light dwelleth? And as for darkness, where is the place thereof? That thou shouldest take it to the bound thereof, and that thou shouldest know the paths to the house thereof. Knowest thou it because thou wast then born, or because the number of the days is great? Hast thou entered into the treasures of the snow, or hast thou seen the treasures of the hell, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against the day of battle and war? By the way is the lights parted, and scattereth the east wind upon the earth. Who hath divided a watercourse for the overflowing of waters, or a way for the lightning of thunder, to cause it to rain on the earth where no man is, on the wilderness wherein there is no man, to satisfy the desolation and waste grounds, and to cause the bud of the tender herb to spring forth? Hath the rain a father, or who hath begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frost of heaven, who hath garnered it? The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Palladius, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Azeroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinance of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in earth? Canst thou lift up thy voice to the clouds, that abundance of water may cover thee? Canst thou send lightnings, that they may go and say unto thee, Here we are? Who hast put wisdom in the inward parts, or who hath given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds in wisdom, and who can stay the bottles of heaven? When the dust groweth into hardness, and the clods cleave fast together, Wilt thou hunt the prey for the lion, or fill the appetite of the young lions? When they couch in their dens, and abide in the covert to lie in wait, who provideth for the raven his food, when his young ones cry unto God, and wonder for lack of meat?
Alright. Next one then.
Yeah.
Knowest thou the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth? Canst thou mark when hinds do cull? Canst thou number the months that they fulfill, or knowest thou the time when they bring forth? Bow themselves as they bring forth their young ones, past their sorrows. Their young ones are in good liking, grow up with bone, go forth and err not on. Who hath set out the wild ass, or who hath loosed the bands of the wild ass? Whose house I have made the wilderness, barren land is. He scorned the multitude of the city, neither regardeth he them. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every. Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee, or abide by thy cub? Canst thou bind the unicorn with his band in the, or will he harrow the valleys after thee? Thou trust him because his strength is great, or wilt thou leave thy labor? Wilt thou believe him, that he will bring home thy seed and gather it into thy barn? Gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks, or wings and feathers unto the ostrich, which leaveth her egg in the earth, and formeth the dust, and forgetteth that the foot crushed them, or that the wild beast them? She is hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain without fear, because God has deprived her of wisdom, neither has he hearted her understanding. What time she lifted up herself on high, she scorned the horse. And hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou closed his neck with thunder? Canst thou make him afraid as a grasshopper, glory of his nostrils? He paweth in the valley, and rejoices in his strength. He goeth on to meet the armed. He mocketh at fear, and neither turneth he back from the soul. Quiver or rattled against him the glittering spear and shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage, neither believeth he that it is the sound of the. He saith among the trumpets, Ha ha! And he smelleth the battle afar, the thunder of the captains and the shout. The hawk fly by thy wisdom, and stretch her wings towards the south? Does the eagle mount up at thy command, and make her nest on high? She dwelleth and abideth on the rock, crag of the strong. Thence they seek out prey, and her eyes. Her young ones also suck up blood, slain are the sheep.
I'll continue with Job 40.
Right.
Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, Shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. Then Job answered the Lord and said, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee? I will lay mine hand upon my mouth. Once have I spoken, but I will not answer, yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. Then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind, and said, Gird up thy loins now like a man. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. Wilt thou also disannul my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me, that thou mayest be righteous? Hast thou an arm like God, or canst thou deliver with a voice like him? Deck thyself now with majesty and excellency, and array thyself with glory and beauty. Cast abroad the rage of thy wrath, and behold every one that is proud, and abase him. Look on, every one that is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. Hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Then will I confess unto thee that thine own right hand can save thee. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass, and his bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees in the covent of the reeds and fins, and shady trees cover him with their shadow, and the willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh with his eyes, his nose pierceth through snares.
Coyote?
Yeah. You want me to continue to 41?
Oh, just following. Break in the same. Alright, 41. Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? Canst thou put hook in his nose, bore his jaw through with thorn? Make many supplications unto thee? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Will he make a covenant? Thou take him a servant forever? Wilt thou play with him as with a bird? Wilt thou bind him for thy maidens? Shall the companions make banquet? Shall they part him among the maidens? Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with spears? Lay thine hand upon him. Remember the battle. Do no more. Hold the hope of him. Will not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is fierce that dare stir him. Who then is able to stand before me? Who hath prevented me that I should? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. Will not conceal his part, nor his comely proportion. Who can discover the face of his garment? Who can come to him with double? Who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round. His scales are his pride, together as with a seal. One is so near to another, no air can come between. Joined one to the other, they stick together, cannot be sundered. By his neesings a light doth shine, and eyes are like eyelids. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, out of a seething pot. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his. In his neck remaineth strength, and a sorrow turned into joy before. Flakes of his flesh are joined together, firm in themselves, cannot be moved. His heart is firm as a stone, yea, as hard as a piece of nether. When he raises up himself, mighty are they, reason of purify themselves. The sword of him that layeth at cannot harm, the spear, the dart, nor the habergeon. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rope. The arrow cannot make him flee. Flingstones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble. He laugheth, shaking his spear. Sharp stone are unto him. He spreadeth sharp-pointed on them. He makes the deep to boil like maketh the sea like a pot of oil. He maketh the path shine after him. One would think the deep to be hoary. Upon the earth there is not his who is made without, holdeth all high things. He is a king over all the children of.
And I'll finish off with Job 42.
Right?
Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I will not, things too wonderful for me which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by hearing of the air, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. And it was so. And after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Timaeanite, My wrath is kindled against thee, and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me ye the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you, and him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, and in that ye have not spoken of me the things which is right, like my servant Job. So Eliphaz the Timaeanite and Bildad the Shuhite, and so far then Namathite went and did according to the Lord, as the Lord commanded them. The Lord also accepted Job, and the Lord turned the captivity of Job, and when he prayed for his friends, also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all of his sisters, and all they that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house. And they bemoaned him, and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So that the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first
Yemima.
Jemimah, the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Keren
Hapu.
And in the land where no woman found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them an inheritance among their brethren, and this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and their sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days.
Putting it lightly. Alright, just a moment. I want to drink. Be right back. Alright, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Alright, so first thing that this isn't even directly tied to this. When it starts here with God speaking Job out of the storm, or the whirlwind translations, this immediately reminded me of Elijah.
Yeah. Also, I believe that they use. I'm trying to remember where else they use God speaks out of a whirlwind for at least the English translation, because at least whenever they're in the desert, they usually refer to it as a pillar of smoke.
Yeah, or fire.
Or fire. It's essentially this for all intents and purposes the same thing. So, I want to say
The interesting thing is that with Elijah, so Elijah, it's in Kings First, chapter 19. Well, in chapter 18, basically slaughters a whole bunch of prophets with Baal.
Yeah, that's that's one of the few instances where you see actually sarcasm in the Bible.
Well, Elijah is a rather sharp-tongued prophet.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. So, Isabel learns that he's done this, sends them a messenger, telling him he's going to come and kill him. So Elijah escapes into the desert. That's when God sort of comes to him and asks him, "What are you doing out here in the desert?" Elijah gives his answer, and then God tells him, to go even deeper into the desert. According to most traditions and translations I'm familiar with, it goes all the way to Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
And then, like when Moses asks God, to show him his honor. Which the interesting thing here is that this is a rather roundabout connection to Job, because apparently what at least what the Jewish scholars and sages assume from "Show me your honor" is that because of what God answers, they assume that Moses asked him, answer me the riddle of pain and suffering. And God tells him, no man can see my face and live. So that's where Elijah goes to. But here, when Elijah is receiving revelation, when there's a big storm and a wind, he says, not in the whirlwind is God, or however it is translated. Stand on the mount before the Lord. Behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks. But the Lord was not in. It doesn't seem to be apparent in the translation, but in Hebrew it's the exact same words.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
It's only until what in Hebrew is until the sound of silence. That's when Elijah knows that God is present, covers his face, and I don't really know what to make of it.
I don't know what to make of it either, because even though it's the pillar of fire. I'm thinking back to Aaron's sons, his two older sons,
Yeah,
who basically mess up the.
They bring to the altar a fire that.
Yeah, and they get burnt up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I guess it's just one of these things where God makes so few appearances in the Bible, and each time he shows up as basically some sort of, for instance, the burning bush, or he shows up as a pillar of fire, or he shows up as in
The angels.
The whirlwind, or of course the various angels who show up, as like men on men at crossroads and things like that.
Yep. And another interesting is that in I think it's chapter 40. It seems as if that the storm relents. It says here, and then, moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am vile, what shall I do? I will lay my hand upon my hands, I have spoken, etc. And then why I'm saying it that this is like a quiet interlude is because right after it says here, then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind. It's like there was a moment of quiet here in the Bible.
It's almost like the classic Eye of the Storm.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I find fascinating about Job is that he in this storm he retains his position.
Yeah, well, his friends are essentially, you don't actually know what the heck they're doing, because you essentially don't, you can only assume that they're in some state of fear or awestruckness or whatever.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Job is still in his position as basically being the defendant in
mm-hmm.
the whole thing.
He still has the strength to answer God, and he simply maintains the his original position of man is weak and unclean, etc., etc. Yeah, and this is interesting because here he's basically, but I will not answer. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. Twice, but I shall proceed no further. Huh. The interesting again is when you skip to the very end, when basically God tells the. It's interesting that he doesn't say this to Job himself, but he says this to Job's friends. He tells them, "You spoke wrongly about me," while Job spoke correctly.
Yeah. That is, and of course, due to his friends spoke wrongly about God, they have to, of course, make an atonement via a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose the last thing of interest is that Job isn't restored until he prays for someone else.
Yeah, he's essentially acting in really the office of a priest.
Yep. All right, I think we've outlined some interesting quandary. Let's see if we can fish out anything specifics. All right. So, actually, I wrote a bunch of questions down. So, a question that just, leapt to mind at first. When God, makes his first appearance and says, "Who is this that darketh counsel?" Is he talking about Job or about his companion?
I'd say it's probably his companions he's talking about in that. But because of course the big thing is Job's not actually giving any counsel to anyone, but his friends are.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm not sure. Well, in the Christian tradition, but there's this whole thing, whenever, not always, but very commonly when God or an angel appears to people, they basically they fall flat on their asses.
Yeah, and basically in a what do they call it? There is an actual term for kind of the full bowing to the ground. The Orthodox
fell on his
Christian,
face.
Yeah, the Orthodox
on your face. No.
Yeah, traditionally the Orthodox Christians do that as part of the the part of their liturgy.
It's done in Judaism. It's done only in the Day of Atonement.
Meanwhile, people, things like Protestants generally don't do that sort. Don't do strong kind of supplication movements, and because essentially Protestant liturgy is very dry. To put it simply, and I shouldn't say that for all Protestant liturgy, because things like the Church of England and Lutheranism still retain a kind of like a quasi-mass sort of style. Of course, Roman Catholics are very famous for their kneeling.
Yeah.
Even though there is the occasional time when they will do the full kind of supplication movement, which I know I only know one of the times because I'm no expert in, of course, Roman Catholic liturgics, but
Gotcha.
But one of the times that they do it is during whenever people take priestly orders. They will literally lay right down in front of the altar.
That makes a sort of sense, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to chapter 38. I think there's an interesting outline God is presenting. So, okay. So he first starts talking basically about, what is it, the second or third segment of creation? When he separates the water above, water below. And yeah, so this is Job and Genesis seem to have a lot of Job does a lot of to Genesis. Really talking about creation and order.
Yeah. Well, God is really, it's not even just creation and order. He's also talking about the limitations of man in this, really, and using creation and order as his demonstration of the pure limits of man's knowledge.
It's not just knowledge; it's also capacity.
Yeah.
Because after all of that, there's talking here, to cause rain on the earth where no man is. So it's also God is also saying here, humans are he's actually not even saying humans are I also make it rain on places where there are no human beings. I suppose this might be a, I don't know if a refutation or a sort of I don't know if it's a refutation, but it's a sort of cajoling. Not everything is about you.
Yeah, I quite agree, because there's definitely. I think he's just underlying that there is more to creation than just humanity,
Mm-hmm.
and generally using. And I think this is definitely reinforced with the the references to Behemoth and Leviathan in the later. Yeah.
But here, if we're just going 38, we had the first 3 days of creation. Then we have rain, and then he starts talking about wild animals and the path of the stars.
Yeah, at least I think last time the path of the stars came up. It seemed to be at least to some degree a liberty of the translators. Still,
in the Hebrew, in the Hebrew, it's how to put it. It's these very odd and old words that some that are are the cardinal directions, but they're also animals. And is Orion known as a fool in any way? Because in the Hebrew it's ksid, which is one of the words for a fool.
I'm trying to remember, actually. Give me a second.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, loud warrior.
Yeah, lit.
Good morning, loud
Thank you,
warrior.
thank you. Let's go to Bible Gateway.
Yeah, I think we're in
And
chapter 33.
book, 1 second.
38.
38, my bad, yeah.
Anyways, with Orion, loud warrior, you have some feedback.
Oh, that is loud warrior.
There. And I returned.
Loud warrior? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so there isn't feedback now. Okay, good.
I removed my earbuds to grab my Bible, so that's what happened.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't see anything to Orion relating to being a fool.
Yeah. Well, apparently there is a myth that Gaia had rage against Orion because he wanted to kill every animal on the planet. So there is a connection to all these animals.
Very nice. How did Gaia connect to this? I missed it.
Oh, to Orion, it's mentioned. Let me pull it up here.
It's mentioned in Job 38:31.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, Wooly Ram said in the Hebrew there's something correlating Orion to being foolish.
Well, he said that the words were were older, difficult words that related to cardinal directions, but also animals.
Okay. Let's see. Uh, Pleiades and Orion, yes, I see them. Wunderbar.
I am actually curious as to when the astronomical references were actually put into the English translation of the Bible.
I'd like to know that too.
Astrology is old.
Oh yeah, it's old. But
we're talking sort of old.
Yeah. I'm just curious if it was the translation committee for the King James version, or if it's even older to something like Tyndale's Bible.
Well, we know the constellation names from the Greeks who predate. Well,
yeah. I'm just curious as to who might have actually put it in.
True.
Oh, anyway, onwards.
Onwards and upwards. All the way up. Okay. The Lord and Job meet, or are we at 30? Yeah, with the Lord and Job meet. Okay, so are we recording this or no?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay, well, there is a bit of a translation inconsistency. I'm seeing this for the audience that I don't know how big it is. The New American Bible Revised Edition and Coyote. Which King James are you using? Or are you using the King James?
I'm just using the regular old King James.
Okay, and I'm checking the Douay-Rheims every now and then. But let's see, Job.
Well, you have to remember one thing about the King James is that they took some things from the Douay-Rheims as well.
You're welcome. Let's go. Good.
No, they literally took things from basically everywhere. Even though by far the person that probably had the biggest influence was William Tyndale.
Yeah.
All right. When did you come in, Loud?
Literally when I set him up, and then had a teeny bit of feedback. So, like 5 minutes ago or so.
So we made. We did a sort of recap and then just read through everything until the end.
Okay.
So there was one thing, just starting again at 38. I just asked, we made a few general points about the structure here. So one thing is, we're pretty sure that who is this who darkens counsel is not talking about Job. It's talking about his companion.
That makes sense. With words of ignorance, the way I remember it is that God was complaining about the how only Job spoke rightly about him.
Yes, and we're saying that because in the end, God tells the companions that they spoke wrongly about him, while Job did not speak wrongly. Interesting point there. He's not saying that Job was right. He was saying that he wasn't wrong. Although in the Hebrew, it's actually saying here that he did. In the Hebrew, it appears that Job did speak. So maybe it's a translation variance.
So you're saying the Hebrew does imply that Job's wrong,
it's
no?
Implied. No, it's implied that because what it's saying here. He's saying, "You did not speak of me rightly as my servant Job did."
That's a comparative, not exactly a positive.
Yeah. So it's I suppose we could just let's err on the side of Job didn't say anything wrong. He may have not said anything right, but he didn't say anything.
He didn't make assumptions as to God's nature.
Yes.
I don't know. I think he made quite a few assumptions.
No, I think he made observations. Job only commented on how God. Well, he asks those questions. He doesn't say those things, and to me, that's a difference.
All right. Now, secondly, we were also noting, again, we've all noticed that there's a lot of connection between Job and Genesis. Now here specifically in 38, God is specifically almost quoting first 3 or 4 days of creation.
Yes. 38:4 onward.
And the interesting thing is that it seems that at some point God is starting to say, not everything I do is about you guys. You know, I bring rain down on the wilderness where there are no men, simply to fill the bellies of wild animals, make grass grow.
So strong. Proud way stop. Yeah.
It's also interesting that the language of birth is used for water, bringing forth. Although maybe that's simply because the book was written in the desert.
The New Testament uses that imagery a lot, so
Yeah.
I'm not too surprised.
I would also.
Water,
Yeah.
cleanliness, death and rebirth for, again, like the act of cleaning, just makes a lot of sense.
Yes, moderns are so squeamish about
Yeah. I'd also point out that, at least in English, the colloquial way to, one of the colloquial ways to say that somebody's giving birth, kind of starting to give birth, is that that a woman's breaking their water. Yep.
Yes, that refers to a physiological phenomenon, but yes, so true.
So now going on to 39, what do you make of this whole Hemuth chapter?
Well, in and then you have very much book Leviathan.
Yes.
Basically describing governments.
See.
So note on 38. 38. Okay.
So, unicorn.
Massive creature. I could or perhaps evil, or just
Behema,
not.
Behema in Hebrew, it's the general word for beast.
For beast?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I suppose the way you
as
could
well
see
means
it,
large creature. So yeah.
Yeah. I suppose you could see it as a general word for large wild creatures.
Yeah,
large one.
Yeah, generally behemoth would be like a long. Well, Leviathan would be a large wild sea creature.
Like
okay, so
shark, more likely a whale.
Yeah. Interesting. That's so you have your interesting combination of both two mighty creatures, the sea and the earth.
Well, they're also, well, the way I see it, people who the ability to abstract like really profound fundamental things from just superiority and from massive creatures that have much stronger strength than we do. It makes our strength rather little. So it's saying like if you don't have the strength to lead Leviathan without a hook or tied down his tongue with a rope, like what business do you have morally, if analogically speaking, you don't have very much power to even understand. And
Let's see. Okay, Leviathan and Behemoth is a specific. It's a sort of suppose you could say it's the answer to the intermission in the beginning of 40. Do you want to read that loud?
are you talking about 40 or
The very beginning
elsewhere?
of 40.
Okay. The Lord then answered Job and said, "Will one who argues with the Almighty be corrected? Let him answer who would instruct God. Him who would instruct God give answer." Then Job answered the Lord and said, "Look, I'm of little account. What can I answer you?" Yes, their little account is quite similar. Put in my mouth. I've spoken once. I will not reply twice, but I'll do so no more. And then I'll question you, and you tell me the answers. So it's funny how Job kind of knows how little he knows, which is kind of his answer to God. But yeah.
Hmm. So in my notes, when I saw this specific, I wrote down, Job speaks a non-answer, a refusal to answer. Spoken once and will not answer it twice and no more. It's just interesting to me that Job is, in some way, he's unmoved by the display that came before.
I would
God is
say
speaking of.
he is, and he isn't. Like he's again, non-answers aren't. He's not continuing to attack God, sure, and he's not about to take back his word. So I guess that is how you're saying it's a non-answer. But the fact that he's pausing so much, and the indignity that he had before is not visible at all. So I'd say it's in content it's a non-answer, but in tone it is an answer.
The usual, he's saying here, I'm of little account. Huh. Okay, there is actually a degree of answer here. He's in a sense he's agreeing with what God just said, that
Yep.
not all creation rotates around you.
Yeah. Let's see, waters of heaven. Can you point out where it said rainfall in the fields on 38? I'm not seeing it right now, and I'm kind of out of it still.
Okay.
I see
Go
nourishment
to
for the raven on 41, but onto the verse for rain out in the fields.
New American Bible Revised, right?
Yep, I am. I think that's around 34, but
Yeah.
how it stick together. I just remember you saying about rainfall in the field. That they're not there. 27. To drench the desolate wasteland till the desert blooms with verdure. There it is. I just jumped over it too many times.
Huh.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, unpeopled wilderness. Because the thing, once he goes from the rain, falling on the empty desert, he goes on, to cardinal directions, some creatures, and then he goes, into wild creatures of the desert.
So I would say that you're reading that what God does isn't entirely about us. It might be about the creatures, is one way of reading it. But I read it to see that it's not so much about God's other creatures, but sort of God's aesthetic, that it is life and abundance regardless, that whether it is a wasteland of, well, this is kind of more of a reading of tone, that well, he might make a desert bloom with verdure that still goes to, it's similar to Job complaining about the rich who are morally bankrupt still keep getting more and more. So
Yeah.
that's a connection I see. It's more of an analogy than an outright connection, but
How does that expression go? The rain falls on the righteous and the wicked alike?
exactly. That's what I was alluding to.
Wonder where I remember that expression. Oh well.
Let's see. Rain, fall, righteous, wicked, Bible. And survey says that's Matthew 5. No, that has to be a cross reference. I see that as a Matthew chapter 5, verse 45, but there has to be another way. There has to be a citation where that's from. I'm going to just flip to Matthew right now, just because part of this is just indulging the connections, which is why we broke this into so many different portions. So 5:45. That you children may be of you may be children of your heavenly Father, for He makes the sun rise on the bad and the good, and the cause rain to fall on the just and the unjust. I like to think that there's a, again, cross reference, but I'm not seeing it right now. Let's see. 5. Nope. I don't see a cross reference for that section.
Probably one of the prophets talks about that.
Yes, there's just that phrase isn't directly linked elsewhere in my Bible anyway.
All right, so let's.
But that's
let's go
Matthew
back to
5:45. But yeah.
Back
So,
to chapter 40.
I'm jumping around there right now, trying to find anything fun on here. Oh, I like though. Can you put a ring on his nose or pierce him through the cheek with the gaff? It's like, can you actually, with your physical prowess, do anything to the Leviathan? And again, the implicit argument is, well, with what you can do to him, what can you do to me?
It's interesting here. There's also it's almost like I think you would say a prefigurement or a pre-answer to the Nietzschean, making up your own morality. Gird up your loins now like a man. I will question you, and you will tell me the answer. Would you refuse to acknowledge my right? Condemn me that you may be justified? Have you an arm like that of a god? Or can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with grandeur and majesty, and clothe yourself with glory and splendor. Let loose the fury of your wrath. Look at everyone who is proud and bring them down. Look at everyone who is proud and humble. Down the wicked in their place, bury them in dust together. Then will I too praise you. Your own right hand can save you. This whole...
There's something to that, and
He's not...
It takes me a couple seconds to put my finger on there.
I don't think that God here is speaking to Job.
So I did a little digging on the astronomical reference.
Ooh,
Okay.
Go on.
It's probably from the LXX, so the Septuagint.
Gotcha.
Wait,
Which
Alex,
makes-
you mean... Oh, Septuagint.
Yeah, Septuagint. Because I went and looked at the Wycliffe Bible, which is the oldest actual Bible in basically somewhat modern English. It's Middle English, but still, it's not Anglo-Saxon, basically. And it has the astronomical references. So I decided, let's go look at the Vulgate, because I have at least a vague understanding of Latin to be able to
Nice.
read at least a sentence of Latin and figure out what it's saying.
Well, all you need is that one sentence, so good on you.
Yeah,
Go
and
on.
it has the astronomical references. So I
Gotcha.
decided to go look at the Greek. Now, I don't know any Greek, so I just flung it into Google Translate, and it has the astronomical references. So,
Gotcha.
it's probably from the Greek.
Okay. It makes a degree of sense because it is talking about the cardinal directions. At least in the Hebrew, it's two of them are referring to cardinal directions, and two of them are referring to creatures. But
And two of them refer to what?
creatures,
Ah.
unknown creatures. In all honesty, it's old word, old Hebrew, lost Hebrew. Maybe I'm going to assume that the Septuagints were 2,000 years closer to that time might actually remember what those words mean.
Yeah.
Likely. Oh, you're saying that those particular words are Pleiades and Orion, you can't read those words exactly because their meaning is lost? I'd like you to rephrase that.
Okay.
Again, I'm not...
So in the Hebrew, Hatikshal ma'adanot kima. The word kima, no meaning. I can't even suss out the root form of it. It doesn't fit. And then what is translated as Orion, the Hebrew word for fool. And then it's mizrot be'ito. Like, will you take out something in its time? The closest I can get to the meaning of this word is either stranger or fear. And then the last one, Aish, which I think is translated as Arcturus, is actually a bird of prey.
Are we still talking about verse 31 or what?
I was already in 32, at least in...
Oh, yes. I see the Mazzaroth in their season, so that probably is the bird of prey to which you refer.
Yeah, now, Mazrot, speaking in the Hebrew.
Sure.
We're talking. It's the you have here an old root form fear, or a newer root form of stranger.
Either fear or stranger. Interesting.
Yeah. I have no idea how they reach anything.
Apparently, the word's meaning is literally a garland of crowns, but that's context of astronomical constellations, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia.
That's a weird one. Because if we go to the two-letter root form, you can reach Zel, which is a crown or tiara.
Yeah, I mean it's.
But anyway, we're completely getting lost in the bushes here.
No, it's part of the beautiful thing of this, and that's why we had this together, is because the tangents could enlighten us. I'm gonna just copy paste Wikipedia in here because it's cool. Okay. Let's see. There's something more from 40 that I'd like. So you're saying that there's something almost Nietzschean about, and there is this something Nietzschean about God's request, or rather demanding of Job from 8 to 14. And
if you can impose justice, do it. Go forward and do it.
Looking at God as a father and how God would not be satisfied, and encourages you to make the most of yourself. I think I find it interesting that God requires so much out of sort of like, are you ready? Go walk. Let's see you walk. Can you handle it? Oh, are you fumbling? Or can you walk straight with your chest out and your chin up, and then I too will praise you, for your own right hand can save you. And that's why I find it really strange to say that the entire universe fell, and then eventually humanity fell. That I haven't quite looked at it that way, and there's something about it that I find wanting. Again, that's just a hunch, so I can't really make much of it. But to say that, well, just that there's enough for man to find a way that is like God in completion, but not one for one with God. What that is a math term for like totally syncing up with God's present term. But I think it's worth noting that the Deuteronomic and Levitical laws were made after the people just really messed up, and that there's like some hidden deeper laws that inform those and probably are a bit more complete. But that might be presumptuous of me to say, but how the context of it being made probably allows 14 to make a bit more sense. Then I too will praise you, for your own right hand can save you. That you don't need, that what you have can provide for you. Yeah?
But the thing is that all of this, it's the whole, gird thy loins like a man. Can you do all of this? And the implication is very clear that you can't.
Yeah. That's why I found it strange that you mentioned Nietzsche, because Nietzsche was under the opinion that it didn't matter whether we can or can't, we had to. So.
Interesting.
And that's why...
I never got that impression, but.
Well, at least that's what I got the impression from the students thereof, or something like people who mention how we have to create our own morals without saying that that's a damnably laughable idea. But yeah, no, that's what you said about how the obvious implication is that it's impossible, is coherent with the rest of 40, and frankly, I don't see humans as such a kind whose knowledge can do that, but...
Yeah. You can look to all our modernistic attempt to construct.
A modernistic one more time?
You can look at all our current attempts at constructing a modernistic framework of ethics.
Yeah.
To see just how badly they fail.
Yep. Something, finite and the infinite.
I don't really see the need for an infinite. So I just
No, I'm saying that if God is not limited, and we are, and we're overwhelmed by God, it's going to be rather hard for us to find a better answer than what's provided. Or rather, it's hard for us to find a way of judging what is a difference in kind. Because that's what Job kind of was doing with, this is my lot. I want an answer, God. And that's another way of saying, this is how the universe is shaped with relation to someone like me. I have arranged my life in such a way that I have a way of evaluating the infinite as a finite. And that's just how it connects.
I'm going to dig back into my notes here. Let's see. So, looking back to 38, 39, and 40 as well. So, bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the whole I'm curious. Do you think Job is a do you still think that Job is a book of suffering?
You asked me if I still think that the book of Job is one of suffering?
Not one of, but about. That the subject is suffering.
Well, I'd say both a yes and no, that it is about how man should respond to suffering, but it's also about the nature of God in a poetical sense. I'm not sure what else you are to draw from it, but just what I've seen from this. There might be some other reading that I'm missing, but I would say, again, a yes and no.
Gotcha. Coyote?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just... I basically fell down the looking through translations rabbit hole.
All right, so come back here. I have some questions which I think I don't. I think that'd be interesting. I'd be interesting to hear your answers, especially as Christians, because they're all about suffering. Now, I'm going to try and make here a very strong connection. So, shoot me down if you don't think there. So throughout our reading of the book, we could see that Job wanted an answer that is specific to why he is suffering, right here, right now, he himself personally, and he was rejecting all the general answers that his companions were giving. Now, I decided to assume that God's answer is an answer. Is in what's it called? An implicit answer to Job's question of suffering. Why am I
like that
personally
phrasing.
suffering?
Go on. I'm on board so far.
So the notes so the notes that come out of here, because God is talking about creation and order and birth and all those really primal things. So we have here a twofold implication. Man lacks the capacity to understand suffering? ? Secondly, suffering is foundational to creation. Correlation, creation is suffering. Suffering creates ? Question, how strong is the implication of in his image and likeness to man's ability to create and suffer? Question, did creation cause God to suffer? Question, does maintaining creation cause God's suffering? And I suppose the connection I could make into a more Christian view of God is, since God is fully God and fully man, yet was crucified in an act that caused extreme suffering.
I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna say the
Yes.
second person of the Trinity, the Son,
Yes.
suffered in it. The Godhead involved a suffering party, but the Godhead itself was not that which suffers.
Gotcha. So, it's because we cannot, how do you put it? We perceive time as a, we experience time. We don't perceive it.
Yes. We might perceive it with our mind, but even that's not really a perception, but more of an experience that tries to make itself a perception.
So I don't know if this question can actually be formed properly, because we experience time. How to put it? Could it be said that suffering is part of creation because suffering is necessary for forgiveness, which is necessary for humanity to exist?
I would go as someone who likes philosophy, and that's one of the things I like about Christendom, is that it incorporates the philosophy of the Greeks and the Stoicism of the Romans, is that by being able to perceive and experience, you have to be able to sense. In order to be able to sense, it's sensitivity by definition. When your nose can have the ability to have pleasure for goodness, anything, those same sensory organs can also be a cause of pain if it is a harsh chemical or too high a dosage of the same thing that makes a pleasant smell. And just physiology itself is both the cause of experience and the cause of pain. So I would have a primary answer that's not written in the Bible, but written in our flesh. However, that's still, let's see. I know God says something quite similar in here about our nature as humans, but let's see, where were you when I founded the earth? When I set limits for it, I passed in the bars of its door. Thus far you shall come, but no further. Here shall your proud waves stop. That it's basically on the human condition, that like how it's not so much physician heal thyself, but it's more like physician, prove your medicine. Prove that your medicine works, or prove that your medicine is something that does it. Like that's kind of the level of the argument required to question God, and we can't fundamentally do that. At some level, we can say, well, this is just based on our experience of it, and we, what's the word, phenomenologically can go no further. And
Yeah, I'm seeing that in Job's answer.
I would say though that if you were to implicitly read that, which I think is wonderful, from the Christian understanding, it's so much that in order for God to properly interact with humanity, it would require God to, again, suffer as well, which is what I love about the incarnation, is that it gives me a reason to care about God rather than turn on him. Because it's not just someone holding the deck, but it's someone who knows the cards, but also wants to help you use your hand the best way with it, to use a card play analogy. Like it's not like, however arbitrary that is uncontrollable creation is, with God's aesthetic, loving beauty and deserving and the undeserving, that you can at least interact with it in a way that you will find most pleasant, or rather, most pleasant of all those other options, and that God's not going to deny that option to you. And so I think there is something to your implicit reading. Although I'd love to go over this recording in order to see that exact query.
Yeah, it's not something I have fully formulated.
Seemed like a good start, however.
Coyote, do you have anything?
Not much more. I would just say that going on with the incarnation, just to almost solidify the metaphor a bit more, is really that God is not just a referee of life. He has, in fact, played the game of life.
Yep. Better analogy.
Well, it's not so much a better analogy as much as I'm just kind of formulating it in a slightly more pithy way.
Oh, it's a bit more concrete than mine.
Come on, guys. He's the admin of the server. What else are we going to say about him?
Anarchangel has been quiet, salty pickle.
Yeah,
no, that's not what he means.
Oh, God. You don't want to get kicked, do you? Yeah, I get that meaning, but that...
You get it right.
No, that's what Job's friend says. That's not what Job says. Salty, reread it. Come back. None of those darkening understanding things.
Yeah, I couldn't find the New American Catholic Bible that I had in my backpack. Probably left it at my grandpa's house.
I would push it through the computer screen, but I'm not sure how that's how it works.
The only problem
Just
is
go
now...
to BibleGate.
Yep. BibleGateway.com. Welcome.
New American Bible, or is it like the New King James, or which edition?
New American Bible Revised Edition if you want to be awesome, or you can read the King James if you're, well...
If you're a
Protestant.
Protestant heretic like me.
Sorry about the echo. I'm in my kitchen making coffee.
Gotcha.
How dare thou?
It has
Sorry.
different versions in Bible Gateway.
Yeah, he even has a version of the Wycliffe Bible put in modern English.
Okay.
John Wycliffe. Basically the
John
first...
Wycliffe.
Yeah, basically
No, I thought St. Jerome's was crazy. No.
Somehow I thought John Wycliffe sounded kind of like John Wick, but anyway.
But yeah, John Wycliffe is basically the great-grandfather of Protestantism.
True enough. Actually, I didn't know that, so I'm just writing his name down.
Yeah.
I need to clean up. I'll be right back.
Basically, John Wycliffe was a professor at Oxford who decided in the 1300s to make English copies of the Bible.
Yeah, who's the first one that did it, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
he was. And remember, this is before printing. So.
Oh boy.
So they literally, had things, and he was basically the leader of the Lollard heresy.
Okay.
Or at least heresy in the view of Roman Catholics. Wouldn't be heresy as far as.
Wait, who's the leader of the Lollards?
John Wycliffe.
Okay.
You know, Pope Francis is pretty much heresy for me either.
Lollards were a group within England that basically pushed Bible reading and criticized things like the veneration of saints.
And a whole bunch of other things about what they thought weren't simple enough.
Yeah,
it's not
it's really just like proto-Protestantism, but with they had a very interesting thing called the poor priests, who would be essentially itinerant preachers that would go around and preach the Bible.
Sounds like Franciscans, but not in order, but more like their own way of styling the priesthood without talking to Rome about it first.
Yeah, basically.
Rome's content to subsume many different religious orders, but they don't really like Bible structures.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't even say Rome was what was important in this. It was really the local English church, which usually had self-governance, more or less. So
I'm just commenting as a Roman that is my defense and understanding. More of a understanding than a defense.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, let's move to 42. I think we have here Job's.
I'm not quite. This is more of a question that's tangentially related. Coyote, have you ever read The Imitation of Christ? It's a good
Thomas à Kempis, right?
Yeah, Thomas à Kempis.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I do know of its reputation.
What reputation is that?
That it's basically the foremost of Roman Catholic devotionals.
First, supposedly, the man himself, Martin Luther, was apparently inspired by it, but it is a quite well-known old one. Just in terms of how he says that what God sort of takes away from us and makes us bear is his way of, again, giving us an opportunity to grow and grow closer to him. I just found that quite tangentially relevant, which is what I wanted to mention to Wooly about it. But I also wanted to mention it to you because it's not so Catholic that you can't benefit from it.
Oh no, it's one of these things where I would definitely read it.
Yeah,
but I just haven't had time. Believe me.
Okay, well,
it's a classic thing of I have so much to read that things I do want to read get pushed back quite often.
Could you audiobook it? Because that's what I'm doing right now.
Maybe.
So I'm gonna post that in the religion tab. But thank you for allowing the digression. Uh-oh. Not again.
Bless you.
Bugger. Okay. So I'm gonna first put the PDF and then the LibriVox. Okay. What were you saying, Wooly?
42, at least in your version of the translation, it basically has Job's capstone.
Yes. Structure. Response. By hearsay I did hear of you, but now my eye has seen you. Therefore I disown what I've said and repent in dust and ashes. Huh, he does disown it at the end. Because it is kind of... To a man who is proud, it is hard to acknowledge that, again, phenomenologically speaking, we don't really have the wherewithal to critique creation itself. But I found it interesting that he does find verse 3, the quote directed at him as well as his friends. Who is this who obscures counsel with ignorance? That even his word could mislead, could cause problems. And that's quite big of him, even though you said that 38 verse 2, which is where it comes from, that was aimed at Job's friends, but Job is such a man that he takes ownership for that as well.
Hey, do you want to read through the entire thing? I'm still in the kitchen. I'm just brewing up some tea, and it's taking longer than expected.
I'll read to verse 10. I know Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be hindered. Who is this who obscures counsel with ignorance? I have spoken but did not understand, things too marvelous for me, which I did not know. Listen, and I will speak. I will question you, and you tell me the answers. By hearsay I had heard of you, but now my eye has seen you. Therefore I disown what I have said, and repent in dust and ashes. Epilogue. And after the Lord had spoken these words to Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, My anger blazes against you and your two friends. You have not spoken rightly concerning me, as has my servant Job. So now take 7 bulls and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourselves, and let my servant Job pray for you. To him I will show favor, and not punish your folly, for you have not spoken rightly concerning me, as has my servant Job. Then Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite went and did as the Lord had commanded them. The Lord showed favor to Job. Coyote, could you read 42 verse 10 through 16?
Okay, I've got the position.
Hurrah!
And his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all his sisters, and all they that have been acquaintances before, and did eat bread with, comforted him all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than the beginning, for he had 40,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. And he called the name of the first the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Corinne. No woman found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. In this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days.
Wonderful. Apparently, current half-proof is a container for black powder used in mascara.
Yep.
Jermima is a dove, and Kazai is a precious perfume.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
was actually
part of
just
what
gonna ask
was.
that.
CI is one of the components in oil of anointment.
Wait, what's using the oil of anointment?
No,
Kazai?
Ktsia, one of the daily
okay.
prayers is reciting all the components of the oil of anointment that was used in the tabernacle and temple. Ktsia is one of the components.
Daily prayers, tabernacle, ointment, ingredient. Okay.
An interesting thing here, to me, the in the English when it says here, Job said, "Okay, therefore I disown what I have said and repent in dust and ashes." Hebrew is actually quite different.
Oh, a difficult verse. Some doubt in view of God's commendation in verse 7 that Job does in fact express repentance, and alternate translations are often given. Along with verse 5, it describes a change in Job, which the encounter with the Lord has brought about, dust and ashes, an ambiguous phrase. It can refer to the human condition or to Job's ash heap. So it's either he's saying that I repent as I am a human man or in an ash heap. Does that rectify it somewhat, or is there something else you wanted to say? Or wasn't worried? Wasn't.
The interesting thing to me here is that specifically the words Job use is al kenem as v'nichamti al afar ve'ef. So it's therefore as that's I suppose you could say I'm disgusted or repelled, and then I am consoled on dust and ashes. So the way I was reading this this verse is, well, dust and ashes. Dust is his, all the people that died, and ashes being all the belongings he lost. Now, the other interesting thing is what gives him consolation is meeting God face to face. He's saying here, up until now, I've only heard about you, and now I have finally seen you, with my own eyes. It's in a way, Job finally, received what he wanted. Throughout the entire book, he wanted a personal audience with God, and he got it. And it actually consoles him on his loss. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I still find it very strange. Oh, I guess he is consoled in dust and ashes. That makes more sense by someone who's both experienced and known what Job has known and sees God. Because I say that if either of those is missing, like if you're not like Job and you see God, or if you experience what Job has experienced and don't quite have that experience, it's much harder because dust and ashes is quite a cruel state of being for someone who doesn't quite see that that's connected to being itself somehow.
Mm-hmm. I just found it fascinating that what finally consoles Job for his loss and suffering is the personal encounter with God. I don't have much else to say about it. It's just
Well, because you're right, his words don't quite show that they repent from the words God tells him, but he seems definitely pleased by meeting with God whatsoever. But I still say he changes his words after hearing from God, and he actually repents from what he has said. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to go back to Chesterton's understanding of the Book of Job because we mentioned it in the very beginning, but I think it ties back again that Job appreciates God being present at all.
Interesting. I really don't agree with the English translation. Not I'm repent in dust and ashes. He is consoled of his grief by meeting God. That maybe I need to make it more strongly. He was stricken, by grief from the tragedy he encountered, and
Chapter
meeting
40.
God somehow offers consolation. That's the point I'm making.
Let's see if I can do this properly. Chapter
Yeah, that's how it is in both
42.
translations.
Yes, it does. Okay, let's see.
If it's in both translations, then it's almost. It might be from the LXX.
Even the Dewey. I reprehend myself and do penance in dust and ashes. Well, repentance doesn't mean that, like, ooh, woe is me, blah, 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 blah. Repentance means is I'm changing as I'm doing. He doesn't say why he's changing what he's doing. Like, you're saying that
he
doesn't quite...
Because he met God. He finally got to meet God in person.
Let's see, reprehend. I don't quite know what that word... Define... I reprehend myself. Well... No, I'm saying that, are you saying in the words in verse 6 does say that he is consoled? They use the word of consolation itself? Yep. Oh, okay. Well, the way I understand repent deeply is that it does involve something that allows you to make a change, and again, with resolution, that you're not just like sadly doing something different, is that you're firmly doing something different because you know what you did before was wrong. So again, I guess I'm trying to say is that there must be some way that these two work together without being fully repugnant enough to be disagreed with. Again, to have like the resolution to repent requires that, so I'm hoping that that's enough. But
I'm simply not seeing. I'm just looking at the text in Hebrew.
Honestly, I think this is a situation where, at least with the English translation, we don't really have, at least us as a group right now, just don't really have the tools to really tackle it. Because basically none of us, we don't know where this line basically comes from, really.
We weren't the biblical scholars themselves that chose the wording, yes, and we don't have the tools to critique it as well. So that is something that I'll note, that that you don't like this translation, but I can't do much else other than write down your discontentment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're actually, in this regard, Wooly definitely is probably the best equipped to criticize it. And the rest of us
we can't answer it.
Yeah, exactly. The rest of us can't answer it in response.
Job's consolation.
Therefore I reprove myself and do penance in dead spark and ashes. That's the Wycliffe Bible. I'm just checking it in different translations now to see.
Okay. Well, I'm a bit taxed, and I need to save some of my mind to finish my homework tonight. I'm rather content with how we ended it, but I think it'd be nice if we just like had another session, just like to go over it all and to figure out what we're doing next. Or I suppose that is what we are to do now, for the next 10 or so minutes. Yeah, I think what you said earlier about how Job is consoled by meeting with God, and the rest of us aren't Job, and yet the just part of us that suffers unrightly, or rather that suffers without cause or without connection to past transgressions, demands some encounter with God in order to feel abated and consoled. And again, that's another thing that I like about the incarnation, is that at any and all times, someone can commune with God about that. In prayer, in encountering God in the gospel itself, that's a nice thing about the sacrament of confession, but that's another argument altogether that would be fun to at least watch if I were you. But yeah, no, that's definitely something how I feel that this book alludes, or rather, or asks for some connection to God being present and redeeming us. Let's see, what's another fun part of this? Jeremiah 11's, no. Different people. Let's see. I still find it funny that Chesterton rightly points out that God rightly critiques the pessimist and the false optimist. Let's see, the mechanical optimist endeavors to justify the universe avowedly upon the ground that it is rational consecutive pattern. He points out the fine thing about the world is that it can all be explained. That is one point, if I may say so, on which God in return is explicit to the point of violence. God says, in effect, that if there is one fine thing with the world, as far as men are concerned, is that it cannot be explained. But that's Chesterton the poet for you. He phrases things in such a way that, well, number one friend doesn't really thinks that there isn't anything there. I think that it's all about the layers of meaning.
Well, yeah, I can see the point. If everything was immediately explicit, the world would be extremely simple.
Yeah. And also, I think that if the universe can't all be explained and God can't all be explained, then to use really lazy argument that there is something to the universe that reminds us of God. If not God being present in it altogether. But I don't think that you can see, that God could possibly be somewhere unless God made a point of being somewhere. Again, incarnation is quite something. Quite something indeed. This is also interesting. To startle man, God becomes, for an instant, a blasphemer. One might almost say that God becomes, for an instant, an atheist. that makes me laugh. And then this is where I think Chesterton comments that like the crocodile might be the behemoth. The behemoth and let's see, horse, eagle, raven, wild ass, peacock, ostrich, crocodile. He so describes them that it sounds like a monster walking in the sun. The whole is a sort of solemn rhapsody of a sense of wonder. The maker of all things is astonished at the things he himself has made. I like this. But in the prologue, we see Job tormented not because he was the worst man, but because it's a lesson of the whole work that man is most comforted by paradoxes. He's the very darkest and strangest of the paradoxes, and it is by all human testimony the most reassuring. I need not suggest what high and strange history awaited this paradox of the best man and the worst fortune. Oh, and this is where Chesterton says better than I can right now. I did not say that in the freest and most philosophical sense there is one Old Testament figure who is truly a type, or say what is prefigured in the wounds of Job. Or I need not say. There is one Old Testament figure who is truly a type, or say what is prefigured in the wounds of Job. Misphrased it, but basically he's saying, I'm not saying it's Jesus, but it's Jesus in a rather Chestertonian way. And that's what I love about how he writes, is that I'm all but saying this, but I'm not exactly saying it. Again, after citing different notes that I found in here, let's see, Eliyahu, choir of the poor reach him. I accept my punishment, I will offend no more. I'm looking at Job 34, 31 and 32. What I cannot see, teach me. If I've done wrong, I'll do so no more. That's Job talking to his friends, but what he ends up doing is disowning and repenting, like distancing himself from what he said, and then unfortunately God doesn't punish him because there's no reason to punish him. But I think I really like the in dust and ashes thing though, because
certainly say that in the Hebrew, whoever wrote Job was a mighty poet.
Yeah.
There's an inescapable musicality whenever Job speaks up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That even though it doesn't carry as well in the English, obviously, you still get the sense of a lot of the epic style within it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really want to know. I want to see Job made into a dramatic presentation.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. It'd have to be some sort of an in media res at the beginning. Is Job?
Well, I would actually argue that the proper form to do Job in would be an oratorio.
Well, that relies on the language again, which there's a bit of a barrier. You have to be like Shakespeare or something in order to craft. Oh, that is basically how Job was meant and made, yes. But I would like some transliteration into another medium.
An oration. Reading.
Biblical. Messiah. Yeah. Great. So, George Handel. basically wrote a huge amount of his oratorios in English because, of course, he was the court composer to the Hanoverian court, which ended up becoming the monarchs of England.
Eventually, yeah.
United Kingdom, should I say, at that point.
Poor Edward. If only his dynasty could have lasted. No, I think I'm getting him confused. Let's see, Walk My Love.
That happened because of the death of Queen Anne, who was the last of the Jacobite, people actually from James's line, James the First's line.
Yeah, I'm just. Well, it's not really even bloodless. The United Kingdom wanted the.
Like one or two in Scotland that happened, but they weren't very big.
Yeah, and they didn't
basically with them, quite simply, a vastly better soldier to support the people.
Using her prowess, but she shouldn't have used her prowess.
By that time, basically completely against Catholicism.
And that fun story.
For
I hope it's recording them better than I am hearing them.
Yeah,
To say the least.
Famous one.
He shall.
My favorite is, which is about Maccabee rebellion.
Right.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool.
Israel in Egypt. Theodoro, Saul.
The most.
With the Maccabee rebellions, you don't find that in a lot of the Protestant translations.
Reading Absalom's story. Just don't listen to those guys, Absalom. You're so close. What about Saul, Wally? Because I see. Oh, not the prophet. Or are you talking about? Yes.
Well,
you said he's a tragic.
The most tragic. But
Go
this
on.
way, he is to the prophet.
Wow.
The gasket.
That's cutting in and out really bad.
And then God basically tells Samuel, "Okay, dude, chill. It's not you they want to throw aside. It's me they want to throw aside. Now go tell them just how bad a king is." Samuel goes and tells them. Of course not. So then he goes and finds, God, guides him to Saul. Now, if I'm remembering the text correctly, Samuel liked Saul a lot. And if you read a bit between the lines, at least Saul, as he began, was a very he was basically a very conscientious young man.
Yes.
And
his heart wasn't very strong, I imagine, because he went into the occult, something like that.
No, he was a good young man, and then the prophet, the prophet who is known in the entire land, comes to him and tells him, "Hey, God decided that you're going to be king." Now, I think up until that point, the Israelites, they're barely a nation. They're an extended network of families and
Families
clans.
that are scarcely a confederation. Yeah.
Yeah, and up until now they've been ruled by judges. It's sort of like it's almost like the mythological Wild West. Yet every once in a while trouble comes up, so a sheriff has to replace sheriff with judge, and you have the same dynamic.
It reminds me of Ireland in many ways.
How so?
Early Ireland?
Yeah, early Ireland. Basically, just no unification whatsoever.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of kings.
CK2 taught me that well.
So then Saul, basically through strength of arms and holy guidance, succeeds in reaching some degree of unity, mostly by killing lots and lots of Philistines, which the Israelite tribes were grateful to him that he did it. So he manages to establish some sense of kingship, and he's given the test with the Amalekites, which he's supposed to smite hip, thigh, woman, child, and animal, completely annihilate these people.
Genocide. Yeah.
And he fails this test.
Huh.
And then his usurper, David, is a shepherd, a shepherd of a minor family.
That is humiliating. Yeah.
Who somehow, his own firstborn, Jonathan, basically adopts him as his brother from another mother. He marries his eldest daughter, and this youngling is the one who takes the kingship from Saul, and the line of Saul is gone. Now there are some traditions and commentators say that in the book of Esther, so Mordecai, which is called, he's a Yemenite man.
Oh no, I didn't read that one. I read Judith, not Esther, but yeah, go on.
He's a Yemenite man, which means he's from the tribe of Benjamin. So the commentators like to say that he's like one of the last remnants of Saul's.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Basically, in Esther, Mordecai is targeted by
yes.
I know the princes.
I know what happens, and I just haven't studied it as in depth as I have Esther.
Okay.
I mean, as I have Judith. Like we read it in our cycle of the entire Bible, so I know what happens. But
and the thing, and continuing this tragic line, David himself is also he's the second tragic king.
Yeah.
With his own he's pursued by his own father-in-law, Saul. Heck, I mean, even when he finally reaches some degree of peace, prosperity, he is forbidden from building the temple because he was a man of blood.
Yeah. That getting so close and having to have your limitation thrown in your face is never fun.
Well, I think it's a very interesting thing that none of the kings of either, United Israel or Israel and Judah, none of them were ever completely great. They all had flaws.
Didn't we hear close with not Methuselah, but there was Hezekiah. Wasn't Hezekiah pretty awesome? But then his son just undid literally everything he did.
He was righteous but weak.
Oh, weak.
Yeah.
I missed that.
And just to bring up, Solomon.
Yep.
Well, he was wise. He whenever asked what his what
he answered.
yeah,
question as well. Yes.
Yeah, whenever he was asked what essentially what do you want, from God, he answered essentially the correct way, and and built the temple and had a fairly peaceful reign. And of course, at the end of the day, he still fell into idolatry.
Yeah, he didn't just fall into idolatry; he also fell into a despot.
Yeah, because who was it? Rehoboam or Jeroboam?
Yerevan.
He of course has the line that oh yeah, my the people come essentially to seek relief from taxation, and his response is, my little finger is going to be larger than my father's loins. And of course, that causes the split between the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that all connects back to I suppose what some consider David's greatest sin.
Yeah.
The
And
sin of
also
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba, which is
The
I'm not
mother
sure
of
that's-
Solomon.
Oh yes. Oh, Bathsheba is
Yeah.
her name. Yes, I
Yeah.
I couldn't understand because of the pronunciation, but yes,
Oh.
it's all
Yeah.
good. I'm just used to my bingo Bathsheba. That's fine.
Bathsheba. Huh. Oh, Bat. I mean, Bat is just the word for daughter, and Sheba is 7, so it's like the 7th daughter. Your name.
Oh.
Well, I guess
Very-
they're just 7, like
Very
Septima.
Yeah, very creative naming scheme.
Yeah. Well, also, Ollie, we were saying, hallelujah. That's all. That's also 2 words, right? Or even 3. It just
I
means
did not-
praise God. Hallelujah, praise. Yeah, God.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Or,
Now I know what I'm
Hosanna.
saying when I say that.
Yeah, or Hosanna, which is save us. Hoshana.
Wow. Hoshana. And hallelujah.
Mhm.
Cool. I'm gonna get going on my studies, but I think we're at an ending point here, so I don't think that's that bad of a deal if we
All
ended.
right.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Willie, and thank you, Coyote.
No problem.
Yeah,
Catch you
no
later.
problem.
Catch you
And
later.
thank you to the gentleman who joined us for a little bit, whose name I'm not
Salty-
remembering right now.
Salty
Salty
Pickle.
Salty Pickle.
Salty Pickle. Alright. Take care.
There.
Yeah, I should probably go ahead and